Hi, welcome to Northern Lights and Insights. I'm Linda Hanner, and today I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Justin O'Brien. And Dr. O'Brien is nationally and internationally known for his wellness programs. He's a consultant in lifestyle management, and he is also the director of the Alam Fala Wellness Foundation in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Welcome, Dr. O'Brien.
Good morning, Linda. Nice to be here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here interviewing you today. Why don't we start by talking a little bit about your background and what motivated you to start writing and speaking on wellness issues?
About 25 years ago, I began to get more interested beyond just the intellectual study of ideas of wellness and consciousness, and I became keenly interested in the ability of the mind to influence the body in different ways. Mm-hmm. And after I came back from Europe, I was sort of restless. I'd gotten my degrees, but I wanted something, what you would call at that time, a holistic approach, something that would incorporate body, mind, and spirit, sort of a path to wisdom, if you will. And I didn't know exactly what I was looking for until I met a gentleman who demonstrated. He embodied this kind of wisdom, and he could control his entire autonomic nervous system. He could raise cancer cells in his body or make them vanish at will. He was doing this under clinical conditions down in the Menninger Foundation. And I said, that's for me. So I got to know him. He said, yes, I'll be glad to train you. So he gathered a small group of us, and we began to work. And lo and behold, we discovered that in a very small way, we were able to exert enormous control over our body. For example, control our blood pressure, release stress, accumulated stress, very easy through breathing techniques. We began to learn how the relationship, say, to food, to your moods affected you. We began to realize how attitude was so central, your self-image, how that influenced the way your body would age or slow down. And as a result, I began more and more to go into this field. And my travels led me around the world to about 23 countries, and I used to investigate various men and women who had these capacities and try to learn from them.
How did you find the people that had these capacities?
I got nosy. And you know, you know what to kind of look for and kind of the sort of the questions to ask. And I would go and hang around until they realized the only way to get rid of this pest is to teach them something. So then I'd run home and practice on myself until I got it down. Then I'd go look for my friends who were always fleeing from me, because I wanted to practice on them. And slowly I put it together in packages, like in stress management and wellness for companies, and show them how to do leadership programs that put people into a holistic pattern so that the corporate health itself of the company would begin to improve and be more beneficial to people, and thus reduce abstinence and stress-related problems.
Okay, you talk about the holistic approach. Why don't you define holistic medicine?
I would put it in the context what I call optimal wellness. Optimal wellness, as I see it, is the conscious ability to integrate body, mind, and spirit so that you're able to realize your full potential as a human being in relationship to an environment. For example, most of us think that we're meant to die around in our middle 70s. Well, that's simply an insurance statistic. I've been in villages where people lived to 135 with all their vitality, and they were riding horses and doing farming. And they didn't have the degenerative ailments that seem to overcome us in our modern Western civilization. And it was basically a lifestyle. Learning to eat basic foods, learning to take care of themselves, learning not to have so many stress-embedded problems and carry them around. Because we don't realize how much our worry and our anxiety ages us.
Okay. And you talk about these people living to 135. Is there an optimal age that the human body has actually been designed to live to that we aren't living up to?
Okay. I'll tell you what I learned when I was living in the Himalayas, in some of the caves with some of these yogis who could.
So you actually lived in the caves with them?
Yes, for a short time. They told me they felt that the optimum length of time you should stay in your body is about 150 years.
Okay.
And that's that's their version.
Some of these people actually live beyond that.
Sometimes they do, yes. Yes.
Do you see a general movement in our society and our modern medicine in this country moving toward a more holistic approach?
Thank you, yes. But I think it's coming from the grassroots. It's coming from the people. It's not coming from the AMA.
That often is the way it happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
The people start seeing things and demanding change and pushing for it.
I think we're realizing that there's more to taking care of ourselves than just surgery and prescription drugs and radiation, which are basically the only choices that a doctor has because of his training. And we're beginning to realize that our body is not a machine. It's not just an aggregate of molecules, but we're a living organism that's conscious, that's able to reflect upon itself and make changes, vital changes, and thus we don't have to just live out our biological destiny. We can actually change it. And there are techniques you can learn. There are resources that you have within yourself, innate resources that when you touch them, like breathing and attitude and movement and rest, when you begin to activate these, you can make enormous changes in the way you feel.
Do you see that as something that we have to take charge of, or do you see that traditional medicine playing a role in encouraging us to do that, along with the surgery and the drugs and all those other things?
I think it's basically you have to take charge. These are self-care principles.
So perhaps the traditional medicine, the physicians, as we know them, don't need to know all these things or don't need to be involved in that.
No,
we should do that ourselves.
Yes. The physician basically is a midwife. He's there to take care of you because, see, healing's an inside job, like happiness. You can't medicate yourself into wellness. You can take care of the broken parts. You can assist the body, but healing is essentially an internal, vital activity that the body itself produces.
Okay, but then what about the role of drugs? I do see that there will at some point, if everybody had this attitude and knew how to move themselves toward optimal health internally, then we wouldn't need drugs at all, or do you see them as still playing a role in illness, in combating
I see
illness?
drugs as basically an adjunct.
Okay.
It's there to be a kind of substitutionary medicine until the body can get on its feet. It's there to assist, but it's not there to be a maintenance diet.
Okay. But then there are some illnesses like diabetes and some illnesses that require medication
For a while.
for stability. You think that people can learn to get along without
yes.
drugs?
I've seen it done.
Any kind of disease then? Or?
I don't claim to know all diseases. All I know is that I've been so impressed. When I was on the medical faculty at the University of London, we were using simply self-care practices, getting people in touch with their own energy and helping them reshape that energy through breathing, through diet changes, through attitude, through beginning to change their whole approach to understanding themselves. And as this was induced, that arousal of hope within themselves began to produce enormous healing changes in them. And thus they were able to reduce their reliance upon prescription drugs. And that gave me the confidence to write that book and to show that people have a lot more resources going for them than they ever dreamed.
Sure.
And I think it's a disservice if we continue to create a sort of codependence upon external agents to somehow feel those are the only ones we can rely upon in order to be healthy.
We'd save a lot of money in this country if we could reduce our reliance on traditional medicine. I guess we would never be able to do away with the need for certain kinds of surgeries, or I mean, we always have the
I think you have to keep that tradition.
And,
But the problem is that tradition has become a sort of monopoly. It's as though there are no other traditions that are available and legitimate. And yet there are. You can go, for example, there's a tremendous health tradition in the American Indian with their reliance upon natural ingredients like herbs. And
in a way, though, aren't herbs drugs as well? A lot of your drugs are made from herbs and so forth.
But the difference is this, is that the herbal or the chemical content of a herb tends to be more compatible with the natural ingredients of the body.
Okay.
It doesn't seem to storm into the body to try to kill something. It's more to enhance the immune system rather than knock out the enemy. And in my scheme of things, it seems to me that the stronger you can build up your immune system, the less susceptible you are then to ailments and illness.
Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense.
So instead of defining wellness or health as the absence of disease, you define it as the robust vitality of an ever-growing human being.
Okay. In your book, you talked a little bit about moving beyond the absence of disease
Right.
into progressive wellness.
Exactly.
So, and how do you define progressive wellness? Can you just
All right.
constantly keep getting
You and I are at
healthier
a
and
certain
healthier?
stage of our life, and we have a certain sense of how well we are. And we tend to think as we're getting older, we have to go into decline. I mean, this is, I think, a cultural superstition that's imposed upon most people. And yet, that's what it is. It's a superstition. What we have to do is reverse that. At any one time, we can increase and enhance our immune system. A recent series of tests were done, I believe, at Yale University, where they took a series of 70-year-old men and they began to give them simple exercises and change their diet over a period of 3 months, and then they grabbed a bunch of 20-year-olds and they discovered that the immune systems were virtually identical. I remember a woman coming to me who was very stiff. She couldn't bend and touch even her knees with her hands. And she wanted to get back her flexibility like she was at 18. And over a series of months, she did stretching, and she began to change her attitude to herself. And at the end of 6 months, she was able to put her hands flat on the ground. She was 92. So I've been so awed by the resilience of the body.
Okay. So we're not genetically programmed to
No.
become ill, but we are genetically programmed to age.
Yes, but you know that you can influence your genetic program consciously.
Influence,
That's
but
right.
not permanently altered.
No, I don't
but-
think you might be able to go to 3,000 yet. Linda. But you can change the vitality as you're growing older. Huh?
Okay.
You don't have to succumb to stiffness and loss of memory and fragility. This can be changed if you want to. So I see what we're talking about here is choices.
So that, yeah, I can relate to that to an extent. But what about, those of us who are brought up in unhealthy environments, what air pollution, or exposed to people who are exposed to chemicals at their job constantly, or something like that? You can't necessarily combat all of that just by changing the way you think. And
Well, I think we got to change our environment.
okay,
Because
so
we're
there's-
always related to the
we
environment.
change the outer
Also
as well
has to
as
be
the
there,
inner
sure.
in order to achieve
You need
that.
fresh air, you need clean water, you need decent food, you need high quality
So
nutrition.
all of those things
have to be
play a
there.
role as well.
But I'm often impressed. A friend of mine once in Pittsburgh, he was working in an asbestos company, and most of his friends would be carried out, with lung problems. Well, he just determined one day, he said, I'm not going to get sick. And it was amazing. He never lost a day in all his work years, and he never became ill. I'm not trying to deny the influence of environment, but I think the primary factor is really your sense of who you want to be.
Now, do you ever get sick?
I've been lucky. I haven't been sick for 25 years. But I think it's just the Irish luck in me. But you know techniques. For example, I don't know if you're aware of that, but you're 48 hours or 72 hours before you get sick, your nose will tell you you're about to get a cold.
Itches.
It itches or it'll close down. And if you can open that nostril, you don't have the cold.
And how do you go about doing that? Just
Well, by doing certain types of breathing exercises. For example, we know that people who tend to breathe too much from the right side are hyperactive. People who tend to breathe too much from their left nostril tend to be depressed.
How do you tell? Just kind of
Just by
put a little piece of
noticing it.
paper under your nose.
You can notice it by
Become conscious of
testing,
that.
yeah. And when you do breath therapy, if you can change the nostril dominance, you can bring somebody out of a depressed mood like that if you get them to breathe from the right side.
Okay. It sounds like you're putting a lot in one area, though. If, for instance, if you feel a cold coming on, you say you can change the way you breathe. What about taking vitamin C or
That
taking
helps
something
too.
else? Do you have to do a combination of things to get your immune system
That would
back
help.
up?
That would help.
Okay.
But you can
Just-
lessen the impact of the cold and oftentimes eliminate its presence by simply changing your energy. Because you see, in a sense, illness is a warping of energy. It's an imbalance of the energy. It's more like the way the Chinese look at it.
So it's really, when you say energy, the way all of the chemicals and whatnot in your body are interacting and
The life force.
fighting off
The life
disease
force.
or-
The chemicals are the more material aspect of this life force. Your life force is more than just chemicals. Your life force is a power within you that can't be measured in a laboratory, but is real. For example, you and I are talking here and we're having thoughts and images. We can't put that in a test tube, but they're real because we're thinking them and seeing them in our minds and hearing them in our minds. So that's part of your life force. And as you begin to work with that life force by reflecting upon it and choosing to do it in certain ways, for example, Linda determines, is she going to work out today? Is she going to walk fast? She makes choices in food. All that has an impact on your wellness. So you really are determining your destiny.
Well, when you say determining your destiny, I mean, we could get in a car accident tomorrow, so we can't have complete control over
That's
our
possible.
destiny. I mean,
true.
I mean,
but you're determining basically how you're going to feel about life, how you're going to think about yourself, how you're going to relate to the environment. I can't predict whether it's going to snow tomorrow or get in a traffic jam, but I can predict pretty much my attitude towards it. I can determine, in other words, my responses to life. And that's what has an impact on your immune system. It's interesting, there was an experiment done by Norman Cousins, the former editor of Saturday Review.
I read his book, what is it, Anatomy of an Illness?
Right,
Okay.
you know. And he was invited to go on a medical faculty at around 60 years old. And while he was out there, he did an interesting experiment one day in the lab, just out of a lark. He said, take some blood. And they took some blood, and they put it through this device that immediately comes out with a profile of your immune system. Then he said, give me 5 minutes. And he stood before this group, and he began to think, back in the 80s, he had Gorbachev and Reagan talking to each other to solve all the world problems of the nuclear scare. They entered into a peace compact. He went to the United Nations. 5 minutes later, they took his blood again, and his immune system improved 53%.
Wow. Well, how do they measure that?
By taking the blood, and they put it through an analyzer machine that can tell all the breakdown of the K cells, the T cells, all the components of the immune system.
So they can increase the fighting cells, the cells that fight off disease and whatnot
but look, 53%. And he didn't say K cell improve, T cell get going. He thought of something that was so exciting to him, that meant so much to him. In other words, he sort of fell in love with it. And that gave him new hope, and that has an immediate impact on the body.
Okay.
And that's how we influence ourselves, by our choices to think and feel about life.
Okay, you talk a little bit in your book about training yourself to respond in a positive way to experiences. And can you talk a little bit? I mean, how do you retrain yourself? A lot of times, your responses seem so automatic, and some people really are. Don't you agree? Genetically, more programmed to be more high-strung or anxious people, that it tends to.
A lot of it's our education, Linda, the way we've been brought up, the way we look at life, our value system.
But you can see two people in the same family where one is real
isn't
calm
that amazing?
and one is very anxious.
And each of them are choosing to look at life differently, slightly. What you can do is retrain people. People can re-educate their energy, their life force. And when you do that, you'll see that you can make drastic changes in the way you feel and respond to life. It's a matter of simply becoming more aware of your own energy, and in that act of awareness, you can make choices. For example, you can breathe high in your chest, and if you do, adrenaline will kick in right away, and you'll feel flushed. Or you can come down to the diaphragmatic region, and you'll become more rested. Now, all stress tends to do is move up high and make you feel very excited or torn, and you can't talk, and your thoughts are getting jumbling. The minute you drop the breath, you lose that stress.
So you talk a little bit about how if you change your breathing, then that changes a lot of other things that are going on.
Profound changes in the adrenaline secretion into the blood. You drop the stress levels, you clear the thinking, you feel more at ease, you have more energy, and you slow down the aging process.
So the breathing is one of the key
fundamental
issues then to start with.
Yeah.
Start breathing right, then everything else will start falling.
A lot of things will start to fall into place then.
You talk about some basic resources for healthy living, and there's several.
Yes, I named 6 in the book. First one is attitude. What do you expect of yourself? Second one then is the breath. How to regulate your breathing so that you're in control of your life force through breathing. Third is nutrition. How to pick quality food and not just bulk. Fourth is movement. Your body has over 600 muscles. It thrives on movement. How to increase movement to energize yourself. Next, the fifth one is rest, how to do conscious rest so that you really renew and restore yourself and not just take a break from work. And the last one is a strange one, solitude, how to enjoy yourself when you're alone. I remember a woman I met in London who so impressed me. She worked in a cancer ward. Most nurses last only a few years because it's so depressing. And this woman was there over 20 years, and she was so cheerful. And I asked her one day, "What's your secret?" And she said, 20 years ago, my brother asked me to buy a house, a small cottage on the west side of London. And I go there on weekends, she said, and I sit among all my friends, the flowers and the birds, and I just dwell there. I gaze upon that beauty, and it restores me. So here's a woman who knows how to take care of herself. She knows how to appreciate being alone. And in the silence of that experience, she renews her spirit. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of Americans. Their spirit is drying up. It's becoming anemic because they don't know how to appreciate the solitude of their own energy.
You think people in other countries have mastered that much better?
I won't
than
say
what we
master,
have?
but sometimes they have an appreciation for that. And whether it's you like to cuddle up with a book or go for a walk in the evening or enjoy a hobby, find something that you can forget about time, where you thoroughly enjoy. It's like a child playing with toys. They're oblivious to the rest of the world. And when you're in that kind of a mood, all of your immune system is operating optimally at that time.
What kind of things do you do?
Well, I like to
escape?
read. I like to go for walks in the woods. I like to listen to music. I thoroughly enjoy I like to write, for example, and I like that silence.
That's one good way to really lose yourself.
Oh,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Keep a journal, you know. Write letters to your friends. Find something that can take you out of your ordinary routine, take you out of the commercialness of life, so that you can get back in touch with the deeper wellsprings of your life.
Now, in your book, you also mentioned a little bit about fasting as being able, a cleansing experience and good for the body, and yet there's sort of a negative attitude toward crash dieting and going without food for several hours or days at a time that is not really healthy. So how
well, there are
does
two ways I
fasting
think you can
work?
fast, Linda. One, if you want to do it very seriously, is take a weekend when you don't have to be too active and make some fruit juices for yourself in the morning and make some vegetable juices for yourself in the afternoon. And just relax. Don't do a lot of work and take a day like that. It'll help revitalize the body. Another way is to don't eat after your evening meal and go all the way to the next morning, and you've got almost at least a 12-hour fast in right there.
So just once occasionally, or doing that?
Occasionally would help.
So
and do it in warm weather, not during the winter, because your body needs to be warmed inside. And it's important then that you don't do it during the rainy season.
So you're not recommending going for several days?
No,
or
I don't. That's too hard on the body for most of us. And we tend to be so active, and you want to pick a time when you can be kind of quiet.
Okay. You talk a little bit also about meditation as being part of the normal human experience. And
Yes.
do we just, you feel, not take enough time to just sit and
I think so.
think? Or
Yes. Meditation is, it's a natural function of the mind. It likes to dwell on things, not by causing a lot of agitated worry, but simply to calmly go inside, to quiet down the body. And it's amazing, once you quiet down the body heals itself. It's very hard for the body to heal itself when we're active, because we've got the chemicals in the body flowing through us that increase our ability to be active. And meditation is a kind of withdrawing for a moment and just being at ease with yourself. And some people may identify it with prayer if they wish, but most of the traditions around the world that involve some meditation is simply a quieting down, a getting together with just your own energy and going in deeper to discover the treasures of your spirit. And it's a very beneficial thing. You feel renewed, you feel refreshed, it tends to clear the mind. Things that used to bother you may fall into place finally because you get a little detached from them.
Okay, in overall, in everything that you talk about so much is moving toward greater health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have to die at some point.
Yes.
So how do you, in a way, death is I mean, that the body is letting go of
Yes.
its health and
letting go of its
vitality
spirit.
and everything. And
No, the vitality goes on. It's just not in the body anymore.
so you believe in life after death.
Oh, of course.
But if people stay healthy all their lives, at what point does their body decide to give up?
Well, usually, there's a tradition that I bumped into that sort of said that you decide when you want to depart.
You decide, oh, now
Yeah.
I've lived my life.
I lived my life.
Your heart just stops.
And you decide, okay, it's time to depart, so you drop this outer garment and go on to whatever's waiting for you beyond.
Smooth transition.
It's a smooth transition, right.
You talk also about lots of different exercises, really, and you demonstrate some of those or show diagrams of those. And do you think that the relaxation, the exercises, is sort of an essential thing too?
Yes. Yes, because the body likes to move. And by moving the body in different directions and twisting here and there, whether it's aerobic running or swimming or bicycling or doing something vigorous, it tends to increase the vitality and make you feel more alive. It also breaks up patterns of tension that accumulate in the body because of the pressures and the demands of our work world. Huh? And it's amazing. Exercise can actually make you feel better even though you're tired, because it gets rid of a lot of the stagnant toxins that accumulate during the day.
Well, you're talking more of the isometric type exercise.
Isometric is excellent,
vigorous.
or isotonic. You can do things like weights, or you can do aerobic dancing, or you could do bicycling, or you could do cross-country skiing, or you could just do stretches. Stretches are so important, especially as we get older, because it strengthens where the ligaments and the muscles go into the joints, so that we don't get weakened as we grow older and fall and break a hip. Load-bearing exercises, jumping up and down, are very good for women because that increases the calcium in their bones. Your body grows most of its calcium. It doesn't get it from the outside. And if you don't use the bone, there's the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. Mm-hmm. And I think most of our bones get weak because we don't do load-bearing exercises with them.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a lot of really positive things that we can do to make ourselves feel better and healthier.
Exactly. That's what wellness is all about.
So
We have so many more choices than the typical 3 that the physician comes up with, see? We decide, we set up our own lifestyle to create the kinds of future we want so we can benefit ourselves and our loved ones.
Right. Well, I guess we're out of time, but it's been great visiting with you, and the book, The Wellness Tree, has a lot of real positive approaches to wellness. I want to thank all of you for joining us for Northern Lights and Insights. This has been an interview with Dr. Justin O'Brien, the author of The Wellness Tree.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency.